courtroom went silent the moment I opened the heavy oak doors. Not a whisper, not a shuffle, just that awful hush that means people already chose a story. And according to their story, I was already halfway gone. The clerk had just finished the petition, guardianship, control of assets, for my safety, for my well-being, for everyone's peace of mind. That's how it's framed when someone wants to take your life politely. Drew sat at the petitioner's table, shoulders squared like he was in a quarterly review. Calm, confident, certain. Beside him, his wife Camille didn't look up. She was writing on a legal pad with the kind of focus you use on a target. In 10 minutes, the judge could sign. 10 minutes, and my home would stop being mine. 10 minutes, and my money would become managed. 10 minutes, and my granddaughter Mia would become a detail in someone else's plan. The judge lifted his eyes from the file. His face changed, fast, like the air went thin. His pen slipped from his fingers and clattered against the bench. His voice wasn't steady when he said my name. Renee called her. He swallowed once, hard. Agent called her. Then, quieter, like he didn't mean to say it out loud. The Wraith. Every head turned. Drew's expression didn't just fade, it collapsed. Camille's pen froze mid-stroke, and that's when I knew something useful. They hadn't done their homework. They'd built a case against a widow, not against me. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand the part they thought I'd never prove. Because this wasn't only about money. It was about disappearance. Let me take you back. Not to my career, not to my medals, not to any legend. Back to the first moment I realized my own son had started speaking about me like I wasn't in the room. My husband Owen got sick before most people our age even start thinking about the word dementia. Early onset, fast, brutal. It didn't take his vocabulary first. It took his map. One day he stood in our hallway and couldn't find the kitchen. Not the word kitchen, the route. Like our home had turned into a maze designed to humiliate him. Watching a mind collapse is a slow kind of violence. It steals the person while leaving their body behind to apologize for it. I retired early because I refused to outsource his last years to strangers. Owen had carried my work for decades. Late nights, missed birthdays, airports, and locked doors. He never asked me to choose. So when it was his turn to need me, I chose him. We lived in an old cedar house near the harbor, a tall, creaking beauty with a wraparound porch and worn stairs that remembered every footstep. Owen rebuilt the banister with his own hands. Even when he couldn't remember my name, his palm still knew that wood. Drew lived 30 minutes away in a glass and steel condo downtown. He visited, occasionally, always rushed, always one eye on his phone, like compassion was a meeting he had to squeeze in. Then he married Camille. Perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect smile that never reached her eyes. She worked as an attorney, mid-size firm, glossy website, community values. The first week I met her, I did what I've always done. I watched. Not for criminality, just for truth leaking out of the seams. Camille mirrored people, a tilt of the head, a borrowed laugh, a cadence shift. It made you feel understood, and then it made you easy. Owen died a year and a half after his diagnosis turned vicious. A respiratory infection finished what the disease had been taking its time with. I held his hand under fluorescent hospital lights. I watched the last breath leave him like a surrendered flag. Something inside me cracked, not into pieces, into a new shape. Drew came to the funeral. Camille came too, dressed in expensive black and checking her phone like grief was an inconvenience. Mia sat beside me, early teens then, quiet, watchful, already learning how adults lie with their faces. When my voice failed during the eulogy, Mia squeezed my fingers. No words. Just presence. After Owen, the house felt too big. Every room was a memory with teeth. So I started spending more time with Mia. Homework at the table Owen refinished. Baking on rainy afternoons. Quiet companionship. The safest kind. That's when Drew and Camille started visiting more. And at first, I was naive enough to think grief was pulling us together. But their visits had a rhythm. They didn't sit with me. They toured me. Drew studied the stairs like they were an obstacle course. Camille glided her fingertip across shelves, checking for dust like it was evidence. They asked about my sleep, my food, my confusion. They spaced the questions evenly, like they were building a file. Then Camille invited me to lunch. Upscale restaurant overlooking the marina. She ordered for me without asking. Salad I didn't want, drink I didn't choose, then smiled like she'd done me a favor. And Drew finally said what they came to say.
Mom, this house is a lot. It's not safe. The stairs, the maintenance, you shouldn't handle all that alone.
He sounded reasonable. That's how they do it. They don't start with theft. They start with concern. Chameleoned in, voice soft and professional. She called it a standard plan. Sell the house. Move me into a lovely community. Assisted living. No stairs, social activities, medical support. And Drew would help manage my finances so I wouldn't deal with complicated decisions.
We just want you taken care of. It's for everyone's peace of mind.
There it was again. Everyone, not me. I smiled. I thanked them for their concern, and I said no. The house was paid off, my pension was secure, and my independence was not a negotiation. Camille smiled, tightened like a belt. Drew looked almost offended, like I'd missed my cue. They dropped it, but I'd seen that look before. The look of people who want something they aren't owed. That night, I found my mail already opened. Not all of it, just enough to feel accidental. A bank envelope, a medical bill. Camille's help had fingers. I didn't confront them. I did what I used to do on cases. I documented. Photos of each room before they arrived. Notes with dates and times. Receipts in a folder. Calls logged. Small, boring proof. The kind that wins when drama fails. Then, Drew started mentioning my forgetfulness. Plans I'd never made. Calls I never had. He'd say them like they were true, then watch my face.
We talked about this yesterday, Mom. You don't remember?
And when I didn't confirm his invented reality, he'd look worried. Performative concern. Perfectly calibrated. Camille began tidying, rearranging drawers, moving mail, shifting things just enough to make me look disorganized. Then, Drew would arrive later and frown at the kitchen.
Mom, the clutter is concerning.
It's not like you.
The first time it happened, cold went through my ribs. It wasn't an argument. It was a construction project. They were building the version of me they needed. Mia noticed before anyone else. She'd watch her parents with narrowed eyes, too quiet for her age. After one visit, she asked me, barely above a whisper,
"Grandma, are you really forgetting?"
I looked her straight in the face. No, she believed me instantly, because Mia had inherited the one trait that makes liars nervous: pattern recognition. The petition arrived months later. Thick envelope, official language. Drew and Camille were asking the court to declare me mentally incompetent. They attached photos of disorganization, photos that didn't match my own. They attached statements about my decline. And then, the part that made my stomach drop, a note from a doctor I had never met, claiming I missed appointments I never scheduled. That's when I understood something worse than greed. They weren't just taking my house. They were manufacturing proof. A court social worker came to evaluate me. Her name was Alina, kind face, careful voice. She walked through my home with those soft, concerned eyes institutions use when they're already leaning toward intervention. A widow alone, a big old house, fresh grief, a family offering help. It's a story the system sees every day, and that's what terrified me. Not because I couldn't fight, because I knew how often the reasonable-looking people win. That night, I heard Camille whisper fighting with Drew upstairs. They thought I was napping. Camille's voice was tight, panic wrapped in control. "We need that house money soon. The review is coming. If I can't cover it." A stair creaked. Drew cut her off. Silence dropped like a curtain. I stood at the bottom of the stairs with my hand on Owen's banister, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Certainty. Fraud has a sound. It sounds like someone trying not to drown. I went into the basement that night and pulled out boxes I hadn't opened since retirement. Not secrets, not classified material, just the bones of how I build a case. Notes, methods, contacts, instincts on paper. I didn't need every detail. I needed a corner of the puzzle strong enough to hold the rest. And I realized something else, something bitter. I would not win this by being right. I would win it by being strategic. So I made a decision that tasted like ash. I became the person they were accusing me of being. I practiced confusion like a language, forgot what day it was, asked the same question twice, looked for my glasses while they sat on my head, small, humiliating performances, designed to make them comfortable. Drew looked relieved. Camille looked satisfied. And then, finally, they stopped being careful. They started speaking in front of me like I was furniture. I wore a tiny recorder inside my sleeve. Old habit, old insurance. I recorded only what I was present for, every visit, every little plan, every slip. Camille took calls in my kitchen without leaving the room.
Move it by Friday. No, not that ledger.
Use the other account. Drew paced, whispering about timelines.
We just need the court to sign once we control the assets. It's clean.
Clean. That word told me everything about how he'd been coached. I didn't drown the listener in procedure. I focused on proof. Two things: paper and sound. First, paper. I got my hands on two versions of the same trust disbursement statements. One that matched the true ledger and one that had been mailed to clients. The numbers were different, but the changes were subtle enough to hide in plain sight. Second, sound. A line that no concerned person should ever say. I heard it late one afternoon when Camille thought I was too foggy to understand. She said it like she was choosing a paint color. Once we control her money, we move her into memory care. She won't even know what's happening. And in that moment, I stopped feeling anxious. Anxiety needs uncertainty. I had none. Then came the morning that turned everything into a point of no return. Gray sky, harbor fog pressing on the windows. I was making coffee when my chest tightened. Not sharp pain. Wrong pressure. Breathing felt like pulling air through fabric. I called Drew. I kept my voice steady because panic gives people excuses. Drew, I need you to take me to the hospital. Something is wrong with my heart.
Mom, I'm in a meeting. Can you call emergency services?
I swallowed. Please, just come.
I really can't leave. That's what emergency services are for.
The line went dead. He hung up. I sat at Owen's table. Owen's hands in the wood. Owen's patience in the grain. With my phone shaking in my palm. And I felt heartbreak in its purest form. Not fear of dying. The realization my son could hear me drowning and choose not to look. I texted Mia. She called immediately.
Grandma, what's happening?
My voice cracked. I need help.
Stay there. I'm calling for help and I'm coming.
She did both. Responders arrived fast. Mia arrived minutes after, breathless, backpack still on, hair half pinned like she'd run through her own life to reach mine. It wasn't a heart attack. It was a severe panic event, stress crushing my chest from the inside. The doctor told me to rest, follow up, reduce strain. 4 hours later, Drew arrived. Camille came with him. Camille looked irritated, like my emergency had been poorly scheduled.
See, Mom? This is why we're worried. These episodes. The confusion.
Mia's eyes turned sharp as glass. She called you this morning. She asked for help. You hung up.
I was in an important meeting. She needs to use emergency services appropriately.
Professionals handle this.
That's the rationality dance. Turning cruelty into logic. Turning abandonment into responsibility. Camille touched Drew's arm, practiced controlling, and used my first name like we were friends. We're just concerned. It's a standard procedure. We want you safe. Safe. That word can be a cage if the wrong person holds the key. 2 weeks later, we were back in court. Competency hearing. Their attorney laid out the story they'd built. Photos, statements, that doctor's note, the social worker's concerns. And the air in the room kept saying the same thing. Sign it. Finish it. Make her disappear. I played my role. Sensible cardigan, trembling hands at the water glass, asking the judge to repeat questions, looking fragile, overwhelmed, small. Their attorney was confident. Drew wore his sad but necessary face. Camille kept glancing at her phone like the outcome was a formality. Then my lawyer stood. Gordon Hale, an old fen from my agency years, retired into private practice with a smile and a spine of steel. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Your Honor," he said, "the defense calls a witness." Their attorney sputtered about disclosure lists. Gordon's reply was calm. "The respondent herself, Renee Calder, will testify." That's when the judge looked at me. Not at the file, at my face. Recognition landed like a blow. Years ago, when he was a federal prosecutor, I testified in his courtroom. I dismantled a ring with a timeline and a map of lies so clean it left nowhere to hide. He remembered what precision looks like. He whispered, "Agent Calder," and the room changed temperature. I stood, and it felt like shedding a costume. My shoulders straightened, my gaze sharpened. I let the court see exactly who I was. "Your Honor," I said, steady. "I owe the court an apology. I have allowed certain parties to believe a narrative about me because they needed to feel safe enough to incriminate themselves." Camille sat up sharply. Drew's throat moved like he tried to swallow a stone. I didn't start with emotion. I started with structure. 3 strikes: paper, sound, motive. First, paper. Gordon handed a folder to the clerk. I placed 2 sets of statements on the evidence table. "These are trust account disbursement records connected to cases handled at Camille's firm," I said. "This set is the true ledger. This set is what clients were sent. They do not match." Camille's face went pale, then strangely blank, like her mind was sprinting through exit routes. Their attorney flipped pages with shaking hands. "Second, sound." I held up my phone. "I will play recordings made in my home. I was part of these conversations. They were lawful." The judge's voice was iron. "Proceed." The first recording filled the courtroom. Camille's voice, crisp and cold. "We need her house money soon. The review is coming. If I can't cover it, I'm finished." Then Drew's voice, my son's voice, trying to sound brave.
"We just have to do it carefully. If she fights the hearing."
Camille cut in, sharp. "She won't.
"Look here."
She can't even track a day."
The ventilation hum became the loudest thing in the room.
I played a second recording, Camille outlining how to steer the social worker without overdoing it. A third, Drew practicing testimony while Camille coached his tone. "Say you're worried. Say you love her. Then say she forgets. Keep it soft." And then I played the last recording, the one that made the court reporter stop typing. Camille again, casual as ordering lunch. "Once we control her money, we move her into memory care. She won't even know what's happening. And if she dies before we fix the accounts, well, her granddaughter gets it anyway. And she's young. Young people are easy to steer." A sound came from the gallery, small, strangled. "Mia." I didn't look at her. If I looked at her, I would shatter. Third, motive. I turned toward Drew, my only child, the baby I rocked to sleep, the child I taught to ride a bike on that same coastal road. Drew knew, I said. He didn't siphon funds himself, but he knew. And he agreed to help her gain access to my assets by having me declared incompetent.
"That's not... I didn't..."
His voice fractured on the second word. The judge didn't look angry. He looked disappointed in a way that felt permanent. Gordon spoke into the silence. He requested dismissal of the guardianship petition. He requested an emergency fraud investigation. The judge advised Camille to remain silent. He ordered the bailiff to contact the fraud division immediately. And then he looked at Drew. "You will seek independent counsel," the judge said. It wasn't a suggestion. Drew sat frozen. For the first time, he looked at me. Not at the confused widow, at the mother he tried to erase.
Mom?
I kept my voice quiet. "You thought I was weak. You thought I was forgettable. You thought I'd become invisible." Gordon handed one more document to the clerk. I requested a restraining order against Drew and Camille, and I petitioned for emergency custody of Mia. Mia stood in the gallery, voice clear, shaking but clear.
I want to live with my grandmother.
The judge asked if Drew objected. Drew opened his mouth. Nothing came out. What could he say? Temporary custody was granted, pending a full hearing. Mia would go home with me that day. Camille was escorted out without ceremony. Drew stared at his hands like they belonged to someone else. I gathered my papers and walked toward the gallery. Mia waited, eyes older than her age. I was almost to her when I heard Drew behind me.
Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I stopped and didn't turn around right away. Because there are apologies that are bridges and apologies that are umbrellas, meant to keep consequences off your head. When I turned, I asked him the question that still burns. You didn't realize I was a person? Drew flinched like I'd struck him.
I'm sorry, Mom. Camille said you needed help.
Camille said what you wanted to hear, I replied. She gave you permission to do what was convenient. Don't hide behind her. You chose.
Can we fix this? Can I make it right?
I looked at him the way I used to look at suspects. Not for punishment, for truth. I don't know, I said. You tried to make me legally invisible. You used my grief as leverage. You hung up when I thought I was dying. Mia stepped beside me. She didn't look at her father. I'm taking my granddaughter home, I said. When you're ready to be honest, you know where I live. We walked out together. I heard Drew crying behind us. I didn't look back. The aftermath moved fast. Camille was arrested. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to exploit an elder. The investigation widened. More accounts, more altered statements, more victims who had been told the numbers were complicated. Mia moved into my harbor house. We turned Owen's old office into her room. She painted the walls a deep shade she called storm violet. She hung string lights and posters of bands I didn't recognize. The room looked alive again. Drew filed for divorce. He lost his job. Companies don't like headlines, especially the kind that implies you'll sell your mother for convenience. Weeks later, he came to the house once, alone. I let him in. I did not offer coffee.
I've been in therapy. A lot. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm telling you I understand.
I waited. Silence is a test people fail when they're lying.
I was jealous of you. My whole life. You were important, and I was just me. Camille made me feel essential, like I could finally be the one who fixed something.
By making me the weak one, I said.
Yes.
That confession didn't heal anything, but it did something else. It stopped the gaslight. It turned the lights on. Write Mia a real letter, I told him. No excuses. No performances. Let her decide. Drew noted like a man learning gravity for the first time. Then he left. That night, Mia found me at the kitchen counter with old photo albums open. Drew as a baby, Drew as a toddler, Drew learning to ride with a too big helmet, and me in every picture the same way, present and not present.
Grandma, you okay?
I'm thinking about your grandfather, I said. And about what I missed.
She said, you protected us. She said, you stopped them.
I swallowed. I did, I said. And I will again. The house creaked softly around us. Outside, harbor rain started falling. Gentle, persistent. The kind that makes the world feel rinsed. Mia went upstairs to sleep. I stayed in Owen's favorite chair and listened to the rain like it was counting time. That's when the doorbell rang. Not late enough to be normal, not early enough to be harmless. Mia patted halfway down the stairs, then stopped. I went to the door. A package sat on the porch. No return address you'd recognize.
Is that from your old office?
Yes. I said, already knowing before I opened it. Because the work doesn't leave you. It just waits. Inside was a plaque, half joke, half respect, about the wraith and continued dedication to justice. And beneath it, a handwritten note from my former supervisor. He'd heard about the hearing. He wrote one line that made my chest go cold in a familiar way. We have a file that doesn't make sense. Mia leaned in over my shoulder, eyes bright with the kind of curiosity that becomes a calling.
Are you going to do it?
I looked toward the staircase, toward the room we'd made safe. Then back at the note, at the familiar pull of patterns and lies. I said, only consulting, only on my terms, only if it never costs you.
You should, Mia said. You're too good at it not to.
I exhaled, and for the first time in months, something like laughter found me. I asked, what about you? What do you want to be?
Mia grinned like a match striking. I'm thinking lawyer. Someone has to keep you out of trouble.
I laughed, really laughed, until the sound felt natural again. Then I picked up my phone and typed a reply to my old supervisor. Coffee sounds good. Send the file. Because retirement doesn't mean stopping. It means choosing your battles. And I've gotten very good at choosing battles I can win. They tried to make me disappear. Instead, they reminded the wrong woman what she is. I see patterns. I predict moves. I catch lies. And the most satisfying part? They never see me coming until it's far too late.